All right, today we're doing a really focused dive into just 3 verses from Isaiah chapter 53, one of the most powerful prophecies you'll ever read. These few lines map out this incredible, almost paradoxical journey, a story of triumph that is born directly from suffering. So let's get ready to unpack it piece by piece.
And that really brings us to our big question for today. How can prophecy show ultimate victory coming from absolute sacrifice? I mean, it sounds like a total contradiction, right? But as we're about to see, these final verses of the chapter give us a pretty stunning answer. Let's jump right in with verse 10. So here we are at verse 10, and right away it hits us with a really challenging idea. The concept that this immense suffering wasn't some random tragedy, but was actually part of a divine plan. Okay, here's the full text. That language is so intense. And let's be honest, that first phrase can be really jarring. Yet it pleased the Lord to bruise him. How could pain and grief possibly be pleasing to God? Well, let's see what the commentary has to say about that.
This is where a source like Ellicott's commentary gives us a really crucial insight. You see, the word pleased here doesn't mean God was taking some kind of cruel delight in the pain. Not at all. It's pointing to his sovereign will, his ultimate purpose, what the commentary calls his good pleasure. The whole idea is that this suffering wasn't just a random awful event. It was a necessary, planned-out part of a much bigger story of redemption.
But then, the verse just pivots immediately from suffering to promise. It says he shall see his seed. And that raises a really important question. Who exactly are we talking about here? Who are the servant's seed, or his offspring?
Well, the answer is just beautiful. The seed here isn't talking about biological children, but spiritual descendants. You can see how the sources connect this to passages like the one from Mosiah, which talks about those who are sealed his. And the Apostle Paul echoes this same idea in 2 Corinthians, calling believers the sons and daughters of the Lord. So the ultimate outcome of all this sacrifice isn't death. It's the creation of this huge spiritual family. Okay, now let's move on to verse 11. The focus is about to shift. We've just seen the Father's will in the suffering. Now we're going to see the servant's profound reward. And it's not what you might think. It's not about money or power, but about a deep internal satisfaction.
So here's Isaiah 53, verse 11. That key phrase is right at the beginning. After the travel of his soul, he shall be satisfied. Now, what on earth could possibly bring satisfaction after that kind of agony? Well, the verse actually tells us.
The key is this very specific phrase, the travail of his soul. This isn't just talking about physical pain. This points to something much, much deeper, an agonizing spiritual and emotional struggle. And you know, our source material points us to the New Testament for some really clear examples of this travail. Look at these 2 moments. In John chapter 11, right before raising Lazarus from the dead, the Bible says simply, Jesus wept. It was a deep internal agony. And think about his lament over Jerusalem from Matthew 23, that cry of sorrow from a heart that just longs to protect his people. That's the kind of soul-deep anguish Isaiah is talking about here.
So the verse goes on to say, by his knowledge shall my righteous servant justify many. Now, justify is a huge theological term. It basically means to make someone righteous in God's eyes. And in this context, it's something that's accomplished by the servant taking on the sins, the iniquities of other people. This one act is the very core of what Christians call the atonement. So what is this knowledge that allows him to justify others? Well, it's not about knowing a bunch of facts. As this quote from John 5:19 suggests, it's about a deep, perfect unity with the Father's will. He knows the plan because he is one with the planner. He's acting in complete alignment with the divine purpose that he has seen.
And this all brings us to the triumphant climax in verse 12. After we've seen the Father's will and the servant's satisfaction, we finally get to the victor's reward, the ultimate exaltation of this suffering servant.
And here it is, the grand conclusion. Just listen to how the language shifts here. We're suddenly hearing words of conquest and victory, portion, spoil, strong. And you have to pay attention to that very first word, therefore. It's so critical because it directly links this victory to all the suffering we've just been talking about.
Now, this idea of dividing a portion and the spoil is a really powerful military metaphor. But as Barnes' notes clarifies for us, this has nothing to do with earthly riches. It signifies a profound spiritual conquest of the world. The servant is now being shown as a victorious king, distributing the rewards of his impossibly hard-won battle. So this leads us to the most important question of all. Why? Why is the servant rewarded?
What specific actions, according to this prophecy, earned him this incredible triumph? Well, the verse itself lays out the reasons very, very clearly.
The text gives us 4 clear reasons, listed right here. First, because he poured out his soul to death. Second, because he was numbered with the transgressors. Third, he bore the sin of many. And finally, he made intercession for the transgressors. Each one of these is a specific reason for his exaltation. Let's just zoom in on a couple of them.
This part of the sacrifice is all about ultimate humiliation. It wasn't enough just to suffer. He had to be publicly shamed, condemned, and literally categorized with the worst criminals in society.
And of course, this is what the Gospels record happening, almost word for word. As the source material points out from the account in Mark chapter 15, he was crucified between 2 thieves. It was a direct, public, and visual fulfillment of this prophecy, of being numbered with the transgressors.
And then we get the final piece of the why, which is this incredible act of grace. Even while he is suffering because of their actions, he acts as their advocate. The verse says he made intercession for the transgressors.
For a perfect example of this, the source material points us right to John chapter 17. This entire chapter is famously known as the Great Intercessory Prayer. In it, just hours before he's arrested, Jesus prays not for himself, but for his followers and for all the future generations who would believe in him. He's already living out this prophetic role as the ultimate intercessor.
So, in just 3 verses, we have gone from a willed, agonizing suffering to a deep and profound satisfaction, all the way to a final triumphant reward, which really leaves us with this final thought to chew on. How does this ancient prophecy, this radical idea of victory through sacrifice and strength through humility, challenge our own modern ideas of what it truly means to win?